All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Optimize You podcast. If this is your first time, welcome. Today's podcast is going to be going over what Alex and I are currently doing. But before we dive into that, if you do find value from this podcast or you've listened to it before, do us a favor by sharing it with a friend, like, comment, subscribe. We love hearing from you guys. Never know, if you do ask a question or put a comment in here, we may use it for a future podcast as well. So before we dive in, let's figure out how my man Alex is doing. How we doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I told you just before this, I actually accepted another job. So for everybody out there, the coaching thing, still coaching, but it's going to be more of a side thing again, which is, I think gonna bring back a little bit more of the joy. Not that I haven't enjoyed it. I just kind of have lost a little bit of the joy and passion when it's been the only thing that I'm doing. So I'm excited to go at this new job and to just bring that coaching to the side. So that's kind of the big thing. Otherwise, I'm finally back down in Arizona. I had a terrible trip back down here. It was just brutal. It was through a snowstorm, and I think I lost like 10 years of my life actually during the course of the first 7 hours of day 2 on my trip. It was, oh my gosh, just like white knuckling through the drive. Couldn't see the road for the first 3 hours of the drive. Getting sprayed with just snow. I had to stop and go like 0 miles an hour when I was passing a truck or a semi because it would just splash so much snow on my car. I couldn't even see. It was rough, dude. But I'm excited to be back in Arizona. It's like 70 here during the day. Beautiful, sunny. And I get pictures from my family that it is cold as shit and snowy back in Minnesota, and it makes me feel really, really good about being down here. But how are you doing, brother?
It solidified your decision, right?
Oh, dude, I was back there, and it wasn't actually that bad for most of the trip. It was like 50, 45, whatever. But there was periods of time where it was like 30, and then at the end, I think the last day when I was leaving, it was real feel of 5 degrees. And I was like, okay, this is why I am down in Arizona. This is why I cannot do this anymore. I can't golf in 5-degree weather. I got to go to a simulator. I have a tee time tomorrow. I got a tee time Saturday. They got snow. They got cold shit back in Minnesota. No, not missing it.
Yeah. Dude, and sometimes that's what it takes, right? You got to remove yourself from the environment. Even if when you have that gut instinct, you're like, as soon as you get exposed to something else a little bit more consistently, and then you go back to the thing that you were originally at, it can reconfirm. It'll really give you an answer like, yes, is the right thing, or no, you know what? I kind of missed this. And it sounds like it went that way for you. Pretty clear, right? Especially with the weather.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the main reason I moved down. It's just the weather. It's like that for a long period of time in Minnesota, tons of snow, cold. And it's really all I've known for the first 28 years of my life for the most part. Right. But and it's great to be around family. Obviously I'm away from family, but in the end, like, it's just, you got to kind of do what's best for you. And I'm like, you know what? I'm miserable in the winters. I feel like that whole seasonal depression thing hits a lot harder in Minnesota when there's few activities. I always thought that like all the things that we did in the wintertime were revolved around alcohol because there really like wasn't a lot of other things to do. And so as a kid, there is, playing in the snow is awesome, tubing, skating on the ice rinks. And that's still fun even when you're older, but it's just you lose that. You don't like, there's not a lot of people that are doing that stuff. And so, it feels good to be able to do my favorite thing in the world, as you know, and as all of our listeners know, I love golf. It's the fucking best thing ever. So I get to do that all year round down here, which is awesome. But how are you doing, brother? How's life?
Good, man. Really good. Just came off the holiday. Coaching my clients through it too. Like the new ones are just learning how to navigate through the holidays and learning how they don't have to freak out and how they can have a sustainable plan that they can kind of lean on. And it's really fun going it through. Obviously, I go through the holidays myself too, but I timed it this year to where I ended a diet or a cut phase right before the holidays, right? Very strategic. right now there's maybe a handful of clients that I have actually going through like a fat loss or diet or cut phase right now. The rest are either in a reverse or they're going into a maintenance, and we're kind of just focusing on literally the fundamentals, the basics, and really getting stronger and building muscle and using the extra calories right now, so that when we do go back into, a more aggressive body fat cut, they're going to be in a much better position, more optimal position to do so. So yeah, the holidays are a tricky time, or can be, if you don't have a plan. So, what I was just talking about right there is I strategically plan for myself as well as, the rest of my clients that I'm working with, and said, hey, if possible, let's try not to have you guys going through any sort of diet during the holidays. I want you guys, now that's not like a free for all, right? But it's just it makes it a lot more enjoyable. Been doing this a long time. And when you're in, just grinding through the process and you're trying to hit everything perfectly and you're trying to cut fat, it's like you sometimes take away the joy of the holiday and enjoying it with friends and family, and it can become monotonous, and now it becomes a problem, right? Versus going like, okay, let's look over the span of the annual calendar. Let's look over 12 months. Like, can we adjust and create some strategy here where we can do a little bit more planning to where you don't have to be as strict or stringent during the holidays? And the answer is always absolutely yes. The problem is when people dive in or they embark on this journey right during the holidays, which, side note, I feel is like the best possible time to do it, because it's the most challenging time. So just throw yourself in the fire if you're listening and wondering whether you should wait till January 1st or not. The answer is no. Like, jump in now. But if you get with a coach that's going to lay out a plan for you, a strategy, and more so an annual plan, month to month, but annual plan, so you can kind of look at your entire calendar and what to expect from your year, the whole process becomes more enjoyable. It's like this weight lifted off your shoulders, so that you don't have to try to hit some arbitrary body weight number by X date, knowing, you and I both know, like, the bodies don't operate and function like that. So yeah, man, just not only planning for myself, but planning for my clients a lot lately, and navigating through the holidays. And it makes it easier on myself as a coach, but then, as an individual going through the process too, always testing and, practicing what I preach. It's so much more enjoyable for me right now. Like, I'm gradually in the process of increasing my calories week to week, so I can keep my results that I got from testing my program for 16 weeks. And so now it's just, I'm enjoying the food, especially during this time. Now that the hard part is not going crazy, like off the rails, because, I'm allotted, a couple hundred calories here week in and week out. And I get like a little taste of that. The hard thing is like, keeping the constraints on and going, okay, you can have a little bit more, but it doesn't mean like just going and binge and go crazy. Right. Like, so that's probably the most challenging part. But other than that, I'm in a really good position right now for kind of backing out and keeping the results that I got during that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now and what I'm focused on. And, yeah, I'm having fun doing it. I'm enjoying the food. I'll say that, dude.
That's the big thing. That's the big thing. And what would you say? So we both just talked, like, on one of our previous episodes about the holidays and how to set yourself up for success. And really, like, that episode, if you haven't watched it, it applies for the whole year, because we all have events. We have shit going on throughout the year. There's tons of holidays, holiday weekends, all that shit. It's going to come up. If you can learn to navigate those, you're going to be so much more successful. Like Matt said, literally, that is one of the best times to start, because it's the hardest time of the year for so many people. And if you can learn to be successful at the hardest time of the year, then any other portion of the year is going to be super duper easy. And so for you, we had plans going into that. How did you execute your plan on Thanksgiving?
Yeah. So like instead of like, I think most people panic when they see the holidays or like, let's use Thanksgiving, for example, they panic in that scenario. Since I had a plan and all I had to do was execute on the plan, I was excited, man. I was anticipating it. I was looking forward to it. I couldn't wait for it. Like, I'm counting down, right? And the difference in that is it has a lot to do with the mindset. So instead of being in like this defense mode and being like, oh, I don't want to overeat, I don't want to eat too much on the holiday, I've been doing so good, I don't want to undo all my progress. That's where the majority of people are going to be at with their mental mindset, at least from my experience and when I've helped people through this, versus having a strategy and having a plan Not so much to the point where you have to be so strict. Because by the way, anytime you're in this all or nothing mindset during your whole health and fitness journey, chances are it's not going to work out to your favor. We see it all the time come January 1st. Oh, I'm all in. I'm going from 0 days to 5 workouts a day. I'm going from shitty processed food and all the junk to having 0. I'm completely eliminating sugar. Like, we see these huge drastic swings. So if that's you and that's traditionally been you, I'm going to encourage you to not look at things from a binary perspective and build off what you have right now in this current circumstance. And so my kind of broad general message to people going into the holidays, specifically Thanksgiving and leading up to it, is let's focus on the things that are in your control. And depending on where that individual is at in their journey, I don't give them more than 1 to 3 things. You and I talked about it a lot, like the power list, and we're just focusing on the handful of things that individual has. And then I literally told every single client, I was like, we track in my program, right? So they're tracking their macros. They know their caloric intake. And by them submitting it, I can see it through my program and through my app. And on Thursday, I wanted to see zeros from everybody, meaning like, not that they didn't eat anything, but I didn't want them to track anything. And so I wanted them just to use more intuitive approach and give them something to look forward to. And I'll say this to everybody. They'll never hear me say, hey, so-and-so, you can't have X, Y, Z. I'll never say that. It's just, to what degree can they have it? What degree? Is it a food that is going to create this trigger response for you where you're just going to go completely downhill and have a binge episode? That takes self-awareness, which is a skill that needs to be developed time in and, time again. So if, that would be an exception, that would be a one-off scenario, but I more so just gave the advice when it comes to Thanksgiving. I just want you to intuitively eat. Like, don't eat until you hate yourself, eat until you're satisfied, incorporate some movement if possible. But even if you don't, like, so what? I want you to enjoy the tip of the spear. The main focus for you right now on Thanksgiving is to enjoy your time and being thankful and embracing the time with loved ones, friends, family, etc. Because you don't want to be that person. Like, here's the opposite side. What if you go into the holiday, you go into Thanksgiving, and you're so worried about undoing your progress in one day, which, by the way, is damn near impossible. But let's just say you're in that mindset and you go into it, let's go super extreme. Like, you have a food scale out and you're weighing your turkey on the food scale, and you're like holding up the line for people, and like, you know what I mean? Like, you're doing extremes, right? You're trying not to have a single carb. You're just going to have all protein. Like, that would be excessive. And that's a whole nother issue that would have to be dealt with. But I've seen people do that, right? Like, I've seen people in that mindset and in that mind state. So I like to give people way on the other side of the spectrum as far as an approach, and just say, hey, I want you, if you want to focus on anything as far as nutrition is concerned today, like, I just want you to go from an intuitive approach and just eat till you're satisfied. Like, don't eat until you hate yourself, right? Don't eat until you need to go get that extra large size, switch your pants out so that you have more room. Like, you don't need to do all that. Just eat until you're satisfied. Just do that. And don't, there's no need to fill up your plate with shit that you don't like. Like, you don't need to sample everything if you know you don't like something, right? Like, and just enjoy your time and embrace it. And then when people go in with that approach, they understand that they can't undo all the hard work that they've been doing leading up to that. Or if they haven't started yet, like, nothing's going to change. Like, all the hay's in the barn, so to speak. Right. I love that saying, is like, all the work's already done. Right. It's like a team that's leading up to the Super Bowl or this big game. And it's like, you can't just all of a sudden flip the switch on. You either been putting the work in or you haven't. So anything that you do today, here, right now, is not going to matter. It's going to be so small and minuscule in the grand scheme of things. So it was more so just to kind of like let your hair down, relax, stress-free, and really just enjoy it. That was my approach, and my advice to most people as well.
No, I think that's great. And that's huge. That's my approach on like any event for the last like year. And that's not to say I've always been successful, but I was successful on Thanksgiving, is really just to not feel like shit afterwards. And I think I talked about this on the holiday episode we did, which I won't dive too much deeper into, but I really just mirror exactly what you're saying there. Like, it's one day, right? I think that a lot of times for me, when I have like a binge or I do something that I go crazy on, a lot of the struggle comes from the mindset afterwards, right? Generally, you're probably not feeling that good. Maybe you didn't sleep as good. You don't have as much energy the next day. And like that mindset can get you to view your body and yourself in such a different negative light is what I found for myself. And so doing that enough times, what I've realized is that that's just the awareness piece of realizing that that is what happens for me, right? It's like I view myself, I seem like I'm in a lot worse shape afterwards than I actually am. And then once I kind of get back into a groove for 2-3 days, you start to see the version of yourself that you want to see, right? That more ideal version of yourself in the mirror. But it's really easy to pick yourself apart a lot more after we do some of these things we're not proud of, or after we go a little bit crazy, when the key is like, it's over, it's done with, right? Dwelling on it isn't going to do anything about it, right? And this is something the podcast just dropped today as we're talking on Thursday is one on that exact thing. It's like becoming your own best friend, right? Really learning this is something I'm doing right now, is like I'm super harsh on myself. I know we've talked about this a lot. I am really good at talking people into being less harsh on themselves. Not so good at talking myself into being less harsh.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I found myself getting into a groove with it where I did some things, went into some vices, shit like that a lot of us have. But afterwards, my normal routine would be to ruminate on it, right? Like, fuck, you fucking idiot. You did it again. You're a failure, blah, 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 blah. But I got myself. And I was like, you know what? All good. What can we do? Like, how can I just do something to get myself a W? Right? How can I, like, you're going to be just fine. It's all good. Like, we've done this before. It's happened. What can we do to move forward? Right? And just like kind of like just trying to be a lot kinder to myself. And I found there was a certain point last week where I was like, you know what? I actually like myself a lot more. It's like and it makes so much sense, because if you're an asshole, right? Who likes assholes? Everybody knows people that are fucking assholes. Do you like those people? No, you don't. You fucking hate them. They're dickheads. And that's who we are to ourselves in a lot of things. And so it's no wonder that a large population, or a large part of the population, doesn't like themselves, doesn't love themselves, because we're so hard on ourselves. And so that's been something that I have been really, really trying hard to. And I had a little bit of a relapse for a few days where I kind of fell back in and I wasn't being kind to myself. But then I got myself going back in the right direction. And that's kind of how life is, right? It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps. If you can continue, that's awesome progress. If you can continue doing that. But that's another thing I like to remind myself of, which is kind of along the lines of being kinder, having more compassion for yourself, is having those expectations that life and really anything you're going for, any goal, isn't going to be linear. It's going to have a few steps forward and then a step back. And if you understand that step back is coming, that speed bump, that roadblock is coming, then you're more prepared, and it's not going to be as frustrating or as demoralizing. When you think that it should just be step, all of them should be in the right direction, then when that fucking roadblock comes, because it's going to come, shit's going to happen, stuff outside of your control is going to be thrown in your way, then like it wasn't a surprise, right? It's a lot easier to just get back going and get those W's. So those are 2 big things that I've really been putting at the forefront of my life. On top of another thing, 3 things that I've been doing a lot, like working hard on. Another one is just the faith aspect of it. We've talked about faith a little bit on this podcast as well, but just I'm really, really trying to buy in and also remind myself every single day, and even throughout the day, that all I can really do is prepare for something and do my best, right? If I prepare and I do my best, then whatever happens is going to fucking happen. And so like during the interview process for jobs, right, I was just reminding myself, just be yourself, be honest, do your best. And then whatever the end result is going to be the best for me, right? If that is not getting the job, awesome. If that is getting the job, awesome. Whatever that may be. I'm also dating again. And so like in the dating side of things, same thing, right? It's like I could either stress about this and try to have everything covered, or I can just like go in, be myself, and just see if there's a connection there. If there's not, awesome, we'll move on. If there is, cool, let's see where this goes, right? And then just like having that like faith that whatever happens, it happens. And I did read something. So I'm reading this book called The Charisma Myth. Great book. And I just read through an exercise that they were talking about in this book, like a responsibility transfer, which I thought was really, really cool. It's like if you have a lot of stress about something, and it's something, a lot of times these are things outside of our control, right? We continue to stress when we've just done all we can. Then like envision yourself, like kind of close your eyes and take some deep breaths and visualize yourself transferring that burden or that stress from your shoulders to God, the universe, whatever the higher power is that you believe in. And I thought that was a really cool exercise that I did this morning because I read that passage this morning. And I think that's a cool thing for people who are maybe struggle with that, where you kind of struggle with like just constantly thinking about something or like talking, going through the worst case scenario for something and like stressing over and over and over again. Try that out a few times, see if that works for you. I haven't done it enough times to know if it works for me, but I think that was a cool thing that it can help with the faith, can help remove some stress and put you in a good spot to succeed with whatever you're doing.
Dude, faith is so huge. And like to your point, if you haven't practiced it and you guys are listening to this, God, higher power, whatever you choose to believe in, take that stress and put it onto their shoulders, knowing that something else bigger than you is there for you. And when you do that, and it takes some trust, it takes some belief, it takes some like, without having to fully be aware and see it. And because we're very like face value, right? We always look at things in like the physical world, but if you have the ability and really, really like intuitively trust in your gut that you can deliver that stress onto something else or somebody else that's higher than you, that's bigger than you, that could see further down the road than what you can currently see right now, and you actually truly give it a chance and believe in it, I promise you it's amazing on how it works, because I have been doing that a lot lately. So like when you said the faith thing, I'm like, dude, the amount that I'll say the low amount of stress that I've been able to experience as of late has been phenomenal, literally unreal. And where I've gone like through these huge ebbs and flows, I've been like, I would say the stage right before that, where I wasn't practicing this, was some of the highest stressed, like just literally like anxiety filled, like, dude, just not fun, like not cool, like not even being myself, like, and really like for me, mine's God, right? And I'm not here to push this on anybody, but that's where I placed my attention. That's where I put my stress. That's where I put my worry and my anxiety. And once I did, holy cow, it feels like this, just a ton is like a metric ton is literally lifted off your shoulders, to where you're like, oh yeah, you don't have to stress about that anymore. You don't have to worry about that. Like, and when you look back at it in hindsight, remember when we're always in the moment and we have our blinders on, we always think that like everything that we're stressed and worried about is literally on us, right? Like we have to fix this. We have to make this work. We have to make it happen. And it's like, no, you can easily, I'm not saying don't take responsibility, but you can easily allow that stress to be transferred from you to something else. And man, it's been such a huge help. And just knowing that like, okay, there's a plan out there bigger for me than what I can even comprehend right now. And to your point, like you just said, as long as I put my best foot forward and I'm there and I'm trusting that whatever's going to happen is going to happen. That outcome has already been dictated. There's nothing I can do to change it except for be myself completely, 100%, unforgivingly transparent. And, you know, we talked about it before too. It's like, what's the other side of that, of like faking it till you make it, or put on this facade, or say you go into your interview and you just lie about some stuff. And then like, it's like, how long do you have to lie for to be able to fill those shoes of whatever it is that you're trying to portray, right? And people do that shit all the time. It's like, how long are you going to have to do that for? Which in turn, later down the road, creates even a higher amount of stress and anxiety and worry. And so I thought that was super cool. You said something before too, right before you started talking about faith. You were talking about your verbiage and like how you've been speaking to yourself and, you know, being down on yourself or not being the nicest person to yourself. And it's easy for us to give those coaching cues and to everybody else. But I'm just curious, at what point did you realize like, man, because this is really hard to do, but at what point did you realize, like, man, I'm not being on my same team here. I'm not being, my biggest fan. I'm not being my biggest supporter. I'm bashing myself. I'm being negative to myself. Like, how long did that period take for you to realize that you were actually doing that? Because I think this is important for a lot of people, because I think there's people out there that don't even realize that they're doing that to themselves, So I'm just curious, like, how long, or what was that turning point to make you realize and kind of like snap out of it?
Yeah, man. And, really for me, I don't think it's any surprise to anybody who listens to our podcast or watches on a regular basis that the last few months since my move was a little bit rough, right? Found myself back in some old habits, doing some things I'm not proud of. And, that's really the period of time where I realized it kind of exposed the shit out of how much of an asshole I was being to myself, right? Constantly putting myself down after doing these things and ruminating on them, thinking about them constantly. None of this stuff was beneficial to me. So it just kind of was throughout that. And then through talking through it, with my therapist. So I'm back in therapy again for like the last month, which is, I was hesitant to go back to therapy because I'd done it for years in the past when I was going through my addiction and getting sober, all of that stuff. And it was very, very helpful, but I found myself being like dependent on it, if that makes sense. And so I'm all for therapy. Obviously I'm doing it, but I think that sometimes it can be a crutch. And that's kind of what I went into this one with, was kind of getting my expectations out from the start. Like, I don't want this to be a crutch. I want to be able to deal with my emotions. Like, that's a huge thing that I'm working on. And within that kind of came up the kindness piece and just how I kind of just realized through talking through a lot of it that I'm just have not been very kind to myself, and have not really like taken my mistakes and forgiven myself for those mistakes, right? When you make them, because we're going to make mistakes, right? That's about life. And I think like some of the biggest things that we learn and some of the biggest growing periods are from these mistakes that we make in whatever area of life that is. And so I'm just trying to kind of switch the whole mistake, put myself down thing and be like, mistake, it happens. It's good. You're good. You're going to be fine. How can we be better? Like, how can I get better next time? Like, how can I move forward in the best way? And my therapist actually she gave me a really good thing the other day, yesterday, actually, where she was talking about, because I was like, how do I do this? Like, like how, or like I was talking about decisions. So I was talking about like, sometimes I have these decision like points, right? I have these points where it comes up and it's like a vice, right? Or a habit, a bad habit, right? And you're kind of in the moment. And I'm like, for the last year or so, I've been present with that decision. Like, I think for a while before that, it was unconscious, right? It was like unconsciously doing these things. Then it's almost like you wake up after and you're like, what the fuck? Like, I did it again, right? I did it again. But I've been present with it, where it's like almost like going back and forth, like waffling on it. Like, probably not a good idea. We don't feel good when we do that. But like, it will feel good. It'll get rid of the stress, right? Like, it's kind of like that inner dialogue. And she basically told me, she's like, have a intention, right? And having like an intention for the day, and something, I actually have 3 reminders throughout the day on my phone. It's my daily intention to do the most loving, compassionate thing for myself in any moment, right? So like when a decision comes up, that decision-making criteria is like, what is the more loving thing? What is the more compassionate thing that I can do in this moment? And picking that. And that's not to say that I'm going to make that decision every time, but if I have that intention and I look at that reminder enough times, it's going to become ingrained more in the subconscious, and it's going to be more of the thing. And it's more or less, I think with anything new, right? Like, this is new to me. It's like a habit, right? It's like being kind. It's not something I'm used to doing with myself. Obviously with others, like, I'm much more kind than I am to myself, but anything takes a few weeks to get going, right? It's like, if you start working out for the first time in a long time, everybody knows the first 2 weeks are the hardest. It's very, very hard. But once you kind of get past that and you build those wins, then it's so much easier. It's with anything. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is just get enough W's under my belt with this, like where I'm making the more loving choice for myself, to where it becomes second nature, and I I don't even really think about it anymore. But that's right now the intention top of mind is that like the most loving, compassionate decision.
That's sick, dude. Because now you're making your decisions based on viewing through that lens versus more of like a reactive state or in the moment, knee jerk reaction on a decision. It's cool. It shows patience. It shows control. It shows intentionality. It shows, and this is when you remember to look through that lens. But even when you said you didn't, and you're like, okay, let me be devil's advocate here and let me toss it back and forth. Like I could do that right now and it would be a quick vice and it would be great, but it's probably not the best thing for me, So like you're going back and forth. Whereas most of the time, if we know that vice is not good for us, we try to justify why it is and why it's not that bad so that we can just get over that little uncomfortableness. And like you're staying there where it's uncomfortable. You're staying there and you're entertaining it a little bit more, instead of just doing the thing that we want to, that's going to be the easy, quick fix and like instant gratification, right? So it's cool that you actually are sitting in the moment, being uncomfortable and looking at both sides of the coin. And then your actual decision making that you're filtering through your subconscious is actually looking through the lens of, let me make the most loving decision for myself. Like that's how you're making the decision now, versus before you might be able to look back on your circumstances and going, was I even looking through that lens? Like probably not, right? Or was I even looking at an alternative to that choice that I was looking to make, and tossing back and forth and getting uncomfortable and staying patient in this decision-making process to kind of weigh both sides out? You probably weren't, right? You were probably just going like, oh, yep, that's easy. That's a quick fix. That's probably going to feel good when I do it. Let me do it. Right. Yeah. Which is what most people do. And that's cool, man. I think it's, again, you and I talk a lot about like veterans and just professionals and people at the highest level. That's why I always loved going and watching BP for Major League Baseball, right? Like those guys just have a different swag about them. They almost look like, it's like borderline, especially the Dominicans. I just love watching the Dominicans. It's almost like borderline, which, by the way, side note, are like the most raw athletes there are. Like you'll see Dominicans get cut from, a position player, then all of a sudden they go step on the bump and throw gas and they can re-sign as a pitcher, right? Never pitched before in their life. But anyways, you get there before the game. I love watching BP. You see each player kind of have their own swag to themselves, really loosey-goosey. They're confident. And the games and their approach to the game is kind of like them. All the work's been done, right? They're just basically like these guys are at the tip of the spear. They're just making sure that they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's before they get ready to compete. And it's more so getting themselves right mentally. They're not trying to like do all this extra work or make these super hard, tough decisions in the moment. Like you don't see them like running hard 90s and warm-ups. Like, nah, dude, like they look fluid. They look smooth. They almost look lazy. They almost look like they're not trying. And that's just a different level of confidence. And that's what kind of came to my mind when you took the moment and opportunity in the decision-making process to be like, well, what's the other side to this? Instead of just making a quick decision, right? Instead of just go. You're like, well, let me toss this back and forth. So I thought that was really cool, man.
Yeah. Well, it's easier said than done, right? It's
for sure.
Like, I'm in it, right? Like I haven't built a lot of momentum yet with it, but it's top of mind, which is key. A lot of times we don't think about that side of things, where if you can kind of make something top of mind for enough period of time, then it's a lot easier with the decisions. But, I think that like it's tough, but we'll get there. And one thing I wanted to talk about before we end here is, you were talking about faith as well. I brought it up, then you kind of dove into how you're using it a lot. I think it'd be good if you're open to sharing this, like what allowed you to start developing more faith. Because I know on my side of things, like I'm still like out there looking, right? I'm out there looking, and right now my whole motto is just what I said, right? It's like prepare, do your best, and whatever happens, happens, right? Like kind of leaving it up to the universe, the world, God. I'm still trying to figure that out, but I do have faith right now. And I have really trying to like have that faith that everything works out like how it's supposed to be. Now, if that's a negative thing, there's probably a positive to that negative. And that is something I'm really trying to embody, but I'm curious on like, what steps have you personally taken to develop more faith? Because I think it is something like it is like one of the biggest stress relievers out there. And everybody I know who has like enormous amounts of faith just seem like a lot happier and joyful, right? There's
Yeah.
just something to that, and they seem a lot less stressed. And so I just would love, and I'm sure other people who maybe are struggling with this would love to hear kind of the steps you've taken to start developing more faith.
Yeah, dude, great question. For me, I know exactly what you're talking about because that was me. Even if you just rewind a couple months back, almost in no man's land. And I think that's great for a lot of people if you're not quite sure. Like, so for that was me. I was like, I'm not quite sure. I grew up and did like split household, like half Catholic, half Christian, right? So I was confused. I didn't know what I was. Did the whole first communion thing on the Catholic side and very traditional, and then went to more like upbeat, more enjoyable stuff. And then I got away from it for a long time, but I never stopped my belief in God, right? So I never stopped believing or anything like that. I had doubts for sure, but it was never like 100% and then zero. And so now, as of late, just the past probably decade, even longer, I just kind of been in no man's land, like meaning I don't know if to what degree do I believe that, to what degree I have faith, like all these things, like how much doubt I have, different levels of stress, things like that. And I think that's going to be everybody until you decide to commit and just be curious. Like that's what I was super curious. I was like, I don't know, like I'm not quite sure what or exactly how I should believe in. And I'm now a big believer in that nothing just happens for just out of sheer coincidence. Like, of course you're going to have like one-off scenarios, but when enough things stack up and they add up on one side, you're just like, like that's way too, like, that's like hitting the lottery. Right. And so when those amount of things happen for me, it elevates my belief. Boom, boom. And again, to be in that position where you're curious and you're just not quite sure, I think is an awesome position. That's where I was like a couple months back. That's exactly where I was. I was like, I'm not sure, kind of going back and forth. I'm like, yeah, I'll have more faith at some point, like later down the road or whatever. Right. Until I was like, you know what? What's the other side of the coin? Like, I know what I've been experiencing as of late. I've been experiencing higher levels of stress than I probably should be. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. Like, what's the other side of this coin? It's like when people are around like magic tricks or something, like if somebody, I saw this the other day. I don't know why I thought about it, but like David Blaine, and like he's doing a magic trick, and you have somebody that's sitting there that knows it's not real, right? Like they knows it's not actual magic. It's just like a slight move of the hand. And so they're like really trying to intently pay attention. They're trying to prove him wrong, right? They're trying to just be like, and so if you're on that side, like it's going to be really hard for you because you're looking through that lens, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm talking to the people who are curious, who are kind of in between, who are kind of just like, I don't know if I'm not a believer. I have zero faith, but I don't think I'm necessarily like 100% believing either. Like I'm not quite sure, because that's where I was. So that's where I can speak from. And so I just wanted to see what the other side of the coin was. I was like, what happens? Just curious. Like what happens if I do dump all my belief and faith in God? Like what happens? Like will I feel this level of stress lifted off my shoulders? Will I be able to better operate throughout on a day-to-day basis? Will I be able to put my trust in something and someone bigger than me to where I can operate my day and just not have to worry and stress about it? I was like, let's just see, like, let's test it out. And man, I can tell you like firsthand, since I've been doing it, it is literally night and day, bro. I'm not just saying that. Like I promise you, it is night and day. And again, I'm not here to push this upon anybody, because I was in everybody else's shoes too, who's curious. That was me to a T. That's why I can speak to it really well. And I'm not going to say this is going to go the same way for everybody else, but if you do have some level of doubt or some level of disbelief, I think that's completely normal. To what you were talking about before, just being curious and seeing what the other side of the coin looks like, and not doing it where you're just like kind of dipping your toe in, where you're like, like I kind of want to do it, but nah, I'm still going to like not believe. And like, it's like, no, the other side of the coin is the opposite of what you've been doing right now, which is probably zero faith, not even being aware. Like entertain the other side, right? And just go, what happens if I let my guard down? What happens if I don't try to be so protective? What happens if I allow my faith to be put in something bigger than me. That's, you know, that's more broad, that's way more powerful than I could ever be. I'm just curious to see what happens. I was just curious, man. And like, when it happens more times than not, again, I don't think things just line up and are coincidental too. And this is on a side note. Another thing that helped too, and this is part of the why I don't think it's coincidence, is my best friend had reached out, you know, that I grew up with, had like said just like some little subtle things to me, like not in, you know, just in regular conversation, had said some things to me. And I think I was looking through the right lens to be able to catch what he was saying. And I don't even know if these were his intentions, but that absolutely solidified my belief to the things that he would tell me and his experience and what he's going through. And I was like, he's going through and I haven't even told him like what I was going through. Right. But he was just sharing with me his experiences. And I was like, holy shit, like I'm experiencing that too. And, we had not shared stories up until that point. That's why, like, I feel that there's no, like, occasionally there can be things that are coincidental, but if you have intention and you just try to see the other side of the coin, if you're in that curious standpoint and you start to see things stack up, you'd be like, whoa, this stacks up way more than just any like coincidental, incident that could happen. It's like when it happens more and more and time again, and you start to elevate your belief more and more and more, like it just becomes a snowball effect. And then you look at where you were before and you're like, I look back and go, damn, I was in no man's land. No wonder I was thinking the thoughts that I was thinking. No wonder I was thinking the way that I was thinking. No wonder I was in a huge lack of belief and totally lost. Like, no wonder. Like it's easy to be over there. I was literally in no man's land, not knowing what to do. And of course, there was this huge glaring sign there for me, just waiting for me to be like, hey, you know, put all that stress and anxiety and worry on me, you know? And as soon as I did, man, again, to your point, easier said than done, right? But it's constant practice, constant development of relationship. And man, I hope everybody can experience that in some way, shape, or form.
I love it, dude. That's awesome. You know, I'm glad it sound different for sure. I know we talked about this a little bit briefly, but you know, that's so great that you found God and you found something that works for you. You found something that relieves your stress. And that's what I'm definitely after. I know I've had faith at times. And like I said, I'm just kind of figuring out where that is. You know what? I know there's a higher power, right? I think that's the big first step for anybody. It's, you know, knowing that there's something out there that is kind of controlling how things go. And that there's so many things out there that we don't have control over. And that, I think that's kind of the place where a lot of our worries come from, are these things that we really can't even dictate the result to. And, you know, once you understand that really like your effort and your preparation are two of the only things that you can really dictate, right? Then it's like, you know what, I'm just going to do my best and also be honest, right? Like just be fucking honest with yourself, with others. Sometimes it can feel hard to tell the truth, you know, or hard to be honest about certain things. But in the end, like it's just fake, right? It just doesn't feel good whenever you do lie. It feels scummy, feels slimy, right? And so I think that's a huge thing. But I think it's great, man. I love that I love this episode. Honestly, I think this is really, really good. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed this as well. Me and Matt talked about going 30 minutes on this, but fuck it. Like honestly, it's just fun to talk and fun to go
long shot.
And we're not going to try to, we're just going to try to keep them where they are. I don't think we're going to try this whole like 30-minute thing we were talking about doing. We'll try to keep it at 45 like we generally do. I think that's a good period of time. Then we can talk more and go a little bit deeper on some of these topics. And these episodes, I say it every time, but these episodes where we just kind of go and we talk about whatever is going on in our lives and let that kind of dictate the conversation. That is my favorite to do. I think it's just so fun. It flows so good. And, you know, we kind of just end up where we end up and can kind of dig deeper into like things like faith or things like being kind to yourself. So we appreciate you all out there. If you got something from this, please share it with somebody. Make sure you like it. And also make sure you subscribe. We drop every Tuesday and Thursday. And so once you subscribe, you'll get notifications when our episodes pop up so you don't miss them. And thanks again. Anything else to add, Matt, before we let the people back to their day?
That's it. This will be dropping before Christmas, I think. So
We'll
yeah, I
probably
want
drop
everybody to
probably just next week from,
next week. Yeah.
yeah, we'll probably just drop
So
it quickly. So you guys will probably get this on,
beginning of
Friday,
December.
December 3rd or some shit, December
Yeah,
4th.
beginning of December. Yeah, no, just wanted to wish everybody a great holiday. That's all. Just wish everybody a great holiday. And if they are stressed in their journey and they feel like they want to, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, the holidays are stressful for me from a health and fitness standpoint, and you're not quite sure where to start, keep things simple. Reach out to Alex or myself. You guys go back, listen to the podcast. But if you do want like one or two takeaway steps, start with some movement, keeping track of your steps, right? That would probably be the first thing. Super simple. And just make small incremental change of where you're currently at. Look, 99% of people are going to know exactly what to do. It comes down to the execution. So 1% better than you were the day before and build off that. I promise you, you do that and stay consistent with it over time, you will thank yourself and you will become a totally different person. So my advice is to not overthink it, put one foot in front of the other. And yeah, man, I enjoyed rocking this one with you today. And we will see you guys on the next one.
Peace.